While paying for the $95,000 venue, I heard a bridesmaid whisper, "I hope she tells him before he says I do." When I demanded to know what she meant, she freaked out and ran away. Using a throwaway account because this story involves real people, and I don't need the drama finding its way back to me. This happened 8 months ago, and I'm finally ready to share the complete story. Fair warning, this is long, but stick with me, because the ending is worth it. Names have been changed for everyone except family members. I, 31 male, work as a senior project manager for one of the largest construction companies in Denver. My journey started at the absolute bottom, working as a general laborer at 18, spending nights at community college, then transferring to finish my civil engineering degree while working full-time days. By 25, I was running smaller projects. By 28, I was managing multi-million-dollar commercial developments and pulling in $260,000 annually. Everything I own, I earned through grinding when others were partying. I live in a downtown loft that I bought with cash, 1,800 square feet with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that makes visitors stop mid-sentence. My 2022 Dodge Challenger SRT took me 3 years to save for, but I wanted to buy it outright rather than finance. My investment portfolio is diversified enough that I sleep soundly regardless of market fluctuations. This background matters because I came from nothing. My father spent 40 years in construction, coming home with concrete under his fingernails and pride in his work. My mother cleaned offices at night to help pay for my college books. They taught me that everything worthwhile requires dedication, sacrifice, and absolute integrity. Nobody ever handed me anything. 3 years ago, I attended a charity auction for children's hospitals. The event was held at the Brown Palace Hotel, black tie, the kind of gathering where Denver's professionals network while supporting good causes. I bid on a few items, wrote a decent check to the cause, and was preparing to leave when I noticed her. Victoria was 26, working as a marketing assistant for some boutique consulting firm, making maybe $32,000 a year based on what I learned later. She was absolutely stunning. Natural blonde, the kind of beauty that made conversations stop when she walked by. The type of woman who received modeling offers from photographers she met at coffee shops. During my high school and college years, girls like Victoria never noticed guys like me. I was the serious student, the guy who worked construction summers while they dated athletes and fraternity presidents. But now I had the loft, the car, the salary, the confidence that comes with genuine success, and suddenly I was very interesting to someone like her. We started talking by the silent auction tables. She complimented my bid on a weekend getaway package, mentioned how much she admired people who supported children's charities. Her smile was radiant, her laugh infectious, and when she gave me her number without me asking, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Our first dinner should have revealed everything I needed to know, but I was too infatuated to pay attention. She arrived at the upscale steakhouse I'd chosen, looking incredible in a dress that probably cost more than her weekly paycheck. Halfway through appetizers, she excused herself to the restroom, returning to inform me that she'd somehow forgotten her purse in her rush to get ready. The second red flag came during our follow-up coffee date. She spent 20 minutes explaining how her studio apartment was basically a glorified closet, and how her student loan payments were absolutely crushing her budget. When I offered to pick up dinner next time at a nicer restaurant, her entire demeanor brightened noticeably. By month 2, she was staying at my loft 4 nights per week. My grocery bills doubled, my utility costs increased, and somehow my gym membership became our gym membership. She'd borrow my car when hers needed maintenance, use my streaming accounts, and gradually integrate herself into every aspect of my daily routine. After 6 months, when her lease ended, moving in temporarily seemed natural. She promised it would just be until she found something suitable, but made no apparent effort to apartment hunt. That temporary arrangement stretched into 2.5 years. Victoria had expensive taste that far exceeded her income, and absolutely zero shame about expressing it. She'd browse luxury websites while I worked, sending me links to designer handbags with messages like, "This would be perfect for the office party," or "I've been wanting something like this forever." When I didn't immediately offer to purchase whatever caught her attention, she'd become distant and cold, until I eventually gave in to restore peace. The engagement ring cost $17,500. She'd researched options for weeks, bookmarking favorites and discussing cut quality and carat weight with expertise that impressed the jeweler. When I finally proposed at her favorite restaurant, she said yes immediately, but her first instinct was to photograph the ring for social media rather than kiss me. Wedding planning consumed our lives for 8 months. She approached it with the intensity of someone organizing a military campaign, creating spreadsheets and binders that tracked every detail. Everything had to be perfect, which invariably meant expensive. The venue had to be the Ritz-Carlton Ballroom, $48,000, because anything less would look cheap to our guests. The flowers had to be imported orchids from Ecuador, $7,800, because local flowers are so common and boring. Her dress came from an exclusive boutique in Los Angeles, $3,900, that required 3 fittings and special shipping. Catering, photography, music, transportation, every category ballooned beyond reasonable expectations. The total budget reached $95,000 because we only get married once, and we can afford it. More accurately, I could afford it. I was paying for everything except her dress and a few minor items she insisted on handling personally. Looking back, I should have questioned why someone earning $32,000 insisted on contributing anything to a $95,000 wedding. The guest list became another source of conflict. She wanted to invite everyone, college acquaintances she hadn't contacted in years, distant relatives, co-workers from previous jobs, even her hairdresser's family. She said she wanted to celebrate with everyone who mattered in our lives. But more guests meant higher costs across every category. When I suggested reducing the number to control expenses, she accused me of being cheap and trying to embarrass her family. She said her friends would think I didn't love her if we had what she called a small, pathetic celebration. 6 weeks before the wedding, Victoria quit her job. Simply walked out on a Tuesday morning because her supervisor was creating an unbearable work environment and making her physically sick with stress. She claimed she needed to focus entirely on wedding coordination and couldn't handle employment pressure simultaneously. Except she made absolutely no effort to find replacement income. Her days became yoga classes, expensive salon appointments, and long lunches with girlfriends. When I suggested she should at least browse job listings, she'd become defensive and claim that managing our wedding was basically a full-time position anyway. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks managing 3 major construction projects simultaneously, coming home exhausted to find her watching reality shows and complaining that vendors weren't responding to her calls fast enough. Her personality began shifting as the wedding approached. She became demanding with service workers, condescending toward vendors, and hostile to anyone she perceived as socially beneath her. I found myself apologizing to caterers, florists, and venue coordinators after she treated them rudely. It was embarrassing, but I rationalized that wedding stress affected people differently. 4 weeks before our wedding, I received an assignment that would change everything. My company won the contract to manage construction of a massive hospital complex in Phoenix, a $200 million project that would establish us as a major player in medical facility construction. They needed their best project manager on site for 4 weeks to coordinate the initial phases. The opportunity was enormous. Success would virtually guarantee my promotion to senior director, adding $40,000 to my base salary and positioning me for even bigger projects. For our future, it was too important to decline. Victoria's reaction was explosive. She accused me of prioritizing work over our wedding, claimed I was abandoning her during the most crucial time of her life. The irony was painful. This project would secure the financial foundation for the lifestyle she demanded, but she couldn't see past her immediate wants. We argued for 3 solid days. She threatened to postpone the wedding, accused me of not loving her enough, and finally gave me the silent treatment for my last 2 days at home. I left for Phoenix believing she'd mature and understand the situation by the time I returned. The first week progressed normally. We talked every evening, and Victoria seemed to have adjusted to my absence. She sent photos of herself handling wedding details, shared updates about vendor meetings, complained about typical pre-wedding stresses. Everything appeared to be proceeding smoothly. During week 2, subtle changes began appearing in our communication patterns. Our conversations became shorter and more superficial. When I asked specific questions about her day or wedding progress, her answers became vague and evasive. Just running errands, or dealing with vendor issues. Nothing concrete or detailed. Her social media activity increased dramatically. Instagram stories appeared every few hours showing her at trendy coffee shops, boutique stores, expensive restaurants, and the gym. She was constantly out, always perfectly styled, but never with her usual circle of friends. When I mentioned this increased activity during one of our brief phone calls, Victoria became immediately defensive. She accused me of being controlling and paranoid, claiming she was simply trying to stay busy while I was off living my best life in Phoenix. The accusation was particularly unfair since I was working 14-hour days in construction sites and client meetings. Week 3 brought more concerning developments. Victoria started missing our scheduled calls, claiming she'd fallen asleep early or forgotten because she was completely exhausted from wedding planning. Yet her Instagram stories showed her out until late hours at various social events, always appearing energetic and happy. I tried calling her parents to check in, thinking perhaps she was struggling more than she wanted to admit. Her mother seemed pleased to hear from me, but appeared confused when I asked about Victoria's wedding stress. She seems happier than ever lately, her mom said. Very energetic, almost glowing. She's been out so much that we barely see her. But when she stops by, she looks wonderful. That comment stuck with me for days. Glowing. Who describes a stressed, overwhelmed bride-to-be as glowing? During my final week in Phoenix, Victoria became nearly impossible to reach. She'd respond to my texts hours later with brief, dismissive messages. Our phone conversations lasted 5 minutes maximum before she found excuses to hang up. I started feeling genuinely concerned that something was seriously wrong. My project concluded successfully, with the client expressing complete satisfaction and my company securing additional contracts worth millions. I called Victoria immediately to share the news about my guaranteed promotion, expecting enthusiasm about our improved financial prospects. Her response was flat and distracted. That's nice, babe. Listen, I'm meeting the photographer in 10 minutes to discuss timeline changes. Can we talk later? She never called back that evening or the next morning, or at any point before my flight home. I flew back to Denver Wednesday evening, 4 days before our Saturday wedding, with an inexplicable knot of anxiety in my stomach. Something was fundamentally wrong, but I had no idea how completely wrong until everything began unraveling the next day. Thursday morning arrived with the typical pre-wedding chaos I'd anticipated. My phone buzzed with messages from various vendors confirming final details. My mother called to coordinate family arrival times, and my email contained dozens of last-minute coordination items. But first, I needed to handle the outstanding venue payment. The Ritz-Carlton's event coordinator had been calling repeatedly about the final balance, $42,000 that represented more money than many people earned in a year, but the price of Victoria's dream wedding. Standing at the hotel's elegant marble reception desk, reviewing invoices that itemized every expensive decision we'd made, I signed authorization forms and prepared to write a check that would drain a significant portion of my savings account. The reception area buzzed with activity, other couples planning their own events, hotel guests checking in and out, staff members coordinating various functions. I was focused on the paperwork when familiar voices from the adjacent corridor caught my attention. Victoria's bridesmaids were apparently meeting to discuss final wedding preparations. Their voices carried just enough for me to overhear fragments of their conversation. Megan, this situation is getting completely ridiculous. She has to tell him before Saturday. That was Ashley, one of Victoria's college friends, who'd been chosen as a bridesmaid. Her voice carried that urgent, worried tone people use when discussing something genuinely serious. But what if he cancels everything? Came the response from Megan, Victoria's maid of honor and closest friend since childhood. All these people are coming. Both families have spent so much money. Then that's still better than him finding out later that the baby isn't his. The words hit me like a physical assault. I actually stumbled backward, catching myself against the reception counter. The hotel coordinator glanced up with concern, but I waved her off, straining to hear more of this conversation that was apparently about my life. She keeps insisting she'll handle everything after the honeymoon, Ashley continued. That's absolutely insane. He's going to figure out the timeline eventually. The timing is just so obvious, Megan whispered back. He was gone for an entire month and now she's pregnant? Jake's not stupid, even if he's been blind about other things. My hands began trembling uncontrollably. The pen I'd been using clattered onto the marble surface, causing several nearby people to glance in my direction. Baby? Pregnancy? Timeline that didn't work while I was in Phoenix. I turned around slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Through the glass doors leading to the corridor, I could see Megan and Ashley standing near floor-to-ceiling windows, their heads close together in what was clearly an intense, private conversation. When Megan spotted me staring directly at them, her face drained of all color. She grabbed Ashley's arm urgently, whispered something I couldn't hear, and they both started walking quickly toward the nearest exit. I abandoned the unfinished paperwork and followed them into the parking garage, my mind racing to process what I'd just overheard. Megan! I called out, my voice echoing off the concrete walls. We need to talk. Right now. She turned around reluctantly, Ashley positioning herself slightly behind her friend like a guilty child seeking protection. Jake, hey, Megan said, her voice artificially bright and several octaves higher than normal. How was your project in Phoenix? Victoria said it went really well. What baby were you discussing in there? The silence that followed felt like it lasted hours. Ashley stared intensely at the ground, while Megan's mouth opened and closed without producing any sound. Megan, what baby were you talking about? We weren't, it's not. She stopped, took a shaky breath, and tried again. You really need to have this conversation with Victoria. Is Victoria pregnant? More crushing silence, but her expression provided the answer I was dreading. And it's not mine because I was in Phoenix for a month? Jake, please understand. I can't be the one to. The timing doesn't work out because I was 1,200 miles away. That's exactly what you said. Tears started forming in Megan's eyes. She looked genuinely tortured, clearly torn between loyalty to her longtime friend and basic human decency towards someone who was about to be catastrophically deceived. You have to talk to Victoria about this, she repeated weakly, then practically sprinted to her car with Ashley following close behind. I stood alone in that parking garage for what felt like forever, trying to process the information that had just destroyed my understanding of reality. My fiancée was pregnant. The timing made it impossible for me to be the father, and she was planning to marry me in 3 days without revealing this information. The drive home passed in a complete daze, my mind oscillating between desperate denial and devastating clarity about what this meant for everything I thought I knew about my life. Victoria's car wasn't in our building's parking garage when I arrived home. A note stuck to our refrigerator, written in her familiar handwriting, explained that she was handling crucial last-minute wedding errands and expected to return sometime that evening. I sat on our my leather couch, purchased with my money, staring at that cheerful note and trying to decide how to proceed. Confronting her directly seemed pointless. She'd obviously been planning to conceal this information indefinitely. I needed concrete evidence, documentation she couldn't deny or manipulate. Her laptop sat open on our dining room table, still logged into her email account. During our entire relationship, I'd never violated her privacy by reading her personal communications. But these weren't normal circumstances, and I was about to discover just how abnormal they really were. The first thing I found eliminated any remaining hope that this might be a misunderstanding. Multiple appointment confirmations from a women's health clinic across town. 3 separate visits scheduled over the past 6 weeks, including one specifically labeled pregnancy confirmation appointment and another designated as prenatal consultation and counseling session. The dates made my blood freeze in my veins. Every single appointment had been scheduled during my Phoenix assignment, while I was working 14-hour days 1,200 miles away to secure our financial future. I continued searching through her email history, discovering correspondence with various wedding vendors where she'd made significant changes to our celebration without consulting me. Menu modifications, seating arrangement updates, music requests, even alterations to our ceremony timeline. All decisions made unilaterally while I was out of state. But her text message history revealed the full scope of her betrayal. Victoria's phone was charging beside her laptop, and when I picked it up, it unlocked automatically to her ongoing conversation with Megan and Ashley. I scrolled backward through weeks of messages, watching the story unfold like a horrible movie I couldn't stop watching. Victoria to Megan, 7 weeks ago. I'm really late. This could be very bad. Megan, how late are we talking? Victoria, 3 weeks now. I'm taking a test first thing tomorrow morning. Victoria, following day. It's positive. I'm completely freaking out right now. Megan, is there any possibility it could be Jake's? Victoria, he's been in Phoenix for 4 weeks. The math absolutely doesn't work. Ashley, joining the conversation. What are you planning to do about this? Victoria, I honestly don't know yet. Maybe he won't figure out the timing issues. Megan, Victoria, that's completely crazy. You have to tell him the truth. Victoria, after the wedding, I absolutely cannot lose everything now. Lose everything. Not lose me because she loved me, but lose everything. The lifestyle, the financial security, the comfortable future she'd constructed around my income. I kept reading, discovering additional details that made me physically nauseated. She'd been involved with someone during my Phoenix assignment, a personal trainer from her expensive gym named Derek. What had apparently started as additional fitness sessions had evolved into a full relationship during my absence. The most damning evidence appeared in a Venmo transaction I found on her banking app. Derek had sent Victoria $600 2 weeks prior, with a description that read simply, "For handling our situation." Money related to the pregnancy, I realized. Probably intended to pay for termination services that she'd ultimately decided against pursuing. But why choose not to end the pregnancy? The answer emerged in another text conversation between Victoria and her sister Emma. Emma, have you told Jake about any of this yet? Victoria, I'm planning to handle everything after we're officially married. Emma, Victoria, that's horrible. He absolutely deserves to know before the ceremony. Victoria. He'll leave me if I tell him beforehand. But once we're legally married, he'll be much more likely to work through the situation. Emma. Work through you cheating and getting pregnant with another man's baby? Victoria. It was a mistake born from loneliness. He'll forgive me eventually, especially once we're husband and wife. The calculation was breathtaking in its coldness. She intended to trap me legally in marriage, then reveal the pregnancy afterward, gambling that the complications of divorce would prevent me from leaving immediately. I printed everything: appointment confirmations, screenshots of text conversations, email correspondence, bank transaction records. By the time Victoria returned that evening, I had assembled a comprehensive dossier documenting her complete betrayal of our relationship. Victoria came home around 7:30 that evening, carrying multiple shopping bags from expensive boutiques and humming cheerfully like someone without a care in the world. She kissed my cheek with apparent genuine affection, chattering enthusiastically about her productive day of final wedding preparations. I observed her performance with cold fascination. She'd perfected the role of excited, slightly nervous bride-to-be, preparing for the happiest day of her life. If I hadn't discovered the truth, I would have believed every word and gesture completely. "How did the venue payment go today?" she asked casually, settling onto the couch beside me and curling her legs underneath her body. "Very interesting experience," I replied carefully. I ran into Megan and Ashley while I was there. They had some absolutely fascinating things to discuss. I watched her face intently. A brief flicker of panic crossed her features before she composed herself and resumed her innocent expression. "Really? What were they talking about?" I gestured toward the coffee table, where I'd methodically spread out all the printed evidence I'd gathered. "They mentioned something about a baby that couldn't possibly be mine. Would you care to explain that?" The transformation was immediate and complete. Her carefully maintained mask of innocence shattered instantly, replaced by naked fear and the desperate look of someone who'd been caught in an elaborate lie. "Jake, I can explain everything. You're pregnant," I stated flatly. She opened her mouth, then closed it without speaking. "You became pregnant while I was working in Phoenix, which makes it biologically impossible for me to be the father. It's really not what you think. You've been planning to marry me this Saturday without revealing this information, hoping I would never figure out the timeline discrepancies." Victoria's shoulders sagged as the full weight of her exposed deception settled over her. For a brief moment, I thought she might offer a genuine confession, express real remorse, or show some authentic emotion about the pain she'd caused. Instead, she became angry and defensive. "You went through my private messages and emails? That's a complete violation of my privacy, Jake." The sheer audacity was staggering. "I violated your privacy? You're carrying another man's child 4 days before our wedding, and somehow I'm the person who did something wrong here. The situation is much more complicated than you're making it sound. It's actually very simple. You had a relationship with Derek while I was working in Phoenix. You became pregnant. You decided to conceal this information until after we were legally married. What aspect of this am I misunderstanding?" Victoria started crying, but her tears seemed born from frustration and anger, rather than genuine remorse. "You're never actually here. You're constantly working and traveling. I was lonely and Derek actually paid attention to me and made me feel valued. So somehow this becomes my fault? I'm not saying it's entirely your fault, but you can't pretend you're this perfect partner when you abandon me for weeks at a time to focus on your career." The entitlement was absolutely breathtaking. In her twisted perspective, my working to provide the lifestyle she demanded had somehow justified her cheating and elaborate deception. "Pack your belongings and get out of my apartment," I said calmly. "What did you just say?" "You heard me clearly. Gather your possessions and leave immediately." "Jake, we can absolutely work through this situation. People make mistakes all the time. We can attend counseling sessions." "Victoria, you're pregnant with another man's child. Our wedding ceremony is scheduled for 3 days from now. There is absolutely nothing to work through." She immediately switched tactics, transitioning from anger to calculated manipulation. "But I genuinely love you. This situation doesn't change my real feelings. We can figure out a solution together." "No, we absolutely cannot. Leave now." That's when her true personality emerged completely. The carefully maintained facade crumbled, revealing the entitled, manipulative person she'd always been underneath. "Fine, but I'm definitely keeping this engagement ring." "No, you're absolutely not. It was a gift." "You can't legally take back gifts." "Watch me do exactly that." I extended my hand. "Ring. Right now." She stared at me with undisguised hatred, but she was intelligent enough to recognize that she'd lost completely. She twisted the $17,500 engagement ring off her finger and threw it directly at my face. "You're going to regret this decision for the rest of your life. You will never find anyone nearly as good as me. I'm completely willing to take that chance." She packed 2 large suitcases that night, taking only belongings she'd brought into the relationship originally. Every expensive item I'd purchased for her remained in my apartment. She left without saying another word, and I changed all the locks first thing the following morning. Friday morning brought the overwhelming task of damage control. Our wedding was scheduled to occur in 36 hours, and over 120 people were expecting to celebrate our union. Family members had traveled across the country, friends had taken vacation days, and everyone had invested time and money in what they believed would be a joyful occasion. I composed a group message to both sets of parents, the entire wedding party, and our closest family members. "The wedding scheduled for tomorrow has been canceled. Victoria is pregnant with another man's child conceived while I was working in Phoenix. I have complete documentation proving this situation. All vendors have been notified. I apologize for the extremely short notice and any inconvenience this causes." I attached the most crucial screenshots, the pregnancy confirmation email, text messages where she explicitly admitted the timing made my paternity impossible, and the Venmo transaction from Derek related to their situation. The response was immediate, overwhelming, and largely supportive. My parents called within 15 minutes. My mother was shocked but immediately supportive, repeatedly asking if I needed anything or wanted company. My father, after a long pause, simply said, "Thank God you discovered this before the ceremony instead of afterward." Victoria's parents were absolutely devastated. Her mother called within the hour, crying and apologizing profusely for her daughter's unconscionable behavior. Her father was furious, demanding to know how Victoria could have acted so selfishly and destructively towards someone who'd been nothing but generous to her. The bridesmaids were mortified by their association with the situation. They'd purchased expensive dresses, arranged time off from work, and some had traveled from other states specifically for our celebration. Ashley sent a lengthy text apologizing for not telling me sooner, explaining how conflicted they'd all felt about keeping Victoria's secret while watching me unknowingly prepare for a fraudulent marriage. But the most satisfying response came from Victoria herself. She began calling around noon, sobbing hysterically and begging me to reconsider my decision, not because she loved me or felt genuine remorse, but because she was beginning to understand the full scope of what she'd lost. No more luxury downtown apartment, no more expensive car and comfortable lifestyle, no more high-end restaurants, weekend getaways, and shopping sprees funded by my income. She'd have to move back into her childhood bedroom at age 29, pregnant and unemployed, completely dependent on her parents' support. Derek the trainer? His situation deteriorated even faster than Victoria's. When his wife discovered the affair and pregnancy, she immediately filed for divorce and kicked him out of their house. His backup plan for financial support evaporated overnight, leaving him scrambling to find affordable housing on a trainer's salary. The financial impact on me was substantial, but manageable. The Ritz-Carlton couldn't refund anything within 48 hours of a scheduled event. Catering costs were entirely non-refundable. The imported flowers had already been arranged and delivered. Photography services had been booked exclusively for our date. I lost approximately $58,000 in various deposits and final payments that couldn't be recovered, but it was unquestionably the best money I'd ever spent. The cost of avoiding a lifetime, married to a cheating liar who planned to trick me into raising another man's child? Absolutely priceless. Victoria continued calling throughout Friday evening and all day Saturday, what should have been our wedding day. Her messages alternated between tearful apologies and angry accusations, sometimes within the same voicemail. I blocked her number after the 15th attempted call. Sunday morning, I woke up in my peaceful apartment, brewed coffee, and read the newspaper in complete silence. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy and optimistic about my future. 6 months later, my life had transformed dramatically for the better. The promotion I'd secured through my Phoenix project came through exactly as promised, adding $38,000 to my base salary and positioning me for even larger opportunities. I purchased a beautiful house in the foothills with spectacular mountain views and plenty of space for the life I was building. I started dating Sarah, a financial analyst who earns an excellent salary, pays her own expenses, respects my work schedule, and treats service workers with genuine kindness. She's everything Victoria pretended to be, but never actually was. Victoria's situation, meanwhile, deteriorated rapidly and comprehensively. She delivered Derek's baby in late February, a daughter she named Madison. Derek's divorce settlement left him nearly bankrupt, so his child support payments were minimal at best. He moved into a studio apartment across town and picked up a second job delivering food to make ends meet. Victoria was forced to move back into her childhood bedroom at her parents' house. While her mom and dad were supportive, they were also overwhelmed by suddenly having a newborn in their home and essentially raising their granddaughter, while Victoria struggled to get back on her feet. Her attempts to restart her career met with consistent failure. Word of the wedding scandal had spread throughout her professional network, making job interviews awkward when potential employers inevitably found mutual connections who knew the complete story. Her reputation was permanently damaged in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her social media presence became increasingly desperate and transparent. Posts about being a strong, independent mother and thriving despite challenges were accompanied by photos that told an entirely different story. Dark circles under her eyes, discount clothing from chain stores, obvious stress and exhaustion in every image. 2 weeks ago, she contacted me from a new phone number. Victoria, Jake, I know things ended terribly between us, but I'm in a really desperate situation right now. My car needs $2,800 in repairs, and I have absolutely no way to afford it. Without reliable transportation, I can't even get to job interviews. Could you please help me out? I promise I'll pay you back as soon as I possibly can. I read her message 3 times, each reading more amusing than the last. Then she called from the same number. Jake, please. I'm completely desperate here. My parents are already helping with all the baby expenses, and I absolutely cannot ask them for more money. I know you're angry with me, and I understand why, but I'm asking you to be the bigger person in this situation. Victoria, I said calmly, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You cheated on me while I was working out of state. You got pregnant with another man's child. You attempted to trick me into marriage while concealing this information, planning to deceive me into unknowingly raising Derek's daughter. And now you want me to give you money? I made some terrible mistakes, but not mistakes. Deliberate, calculated choices. You made a series of selfish decisions. Please, Jake. I have a daughter now who needs things. Derek's daughter needs things. Derek should be the one providing them. A long silence followed. Jake, come on. You're making almost $300,000 annually now. $2,800 is basically nothing to someone with your income. And there it was. The exact same entitlement that had destroyed our relationship originally. In her mind, my financial success was still partially hers to claim, despite everything she'd done. You're absolutely correct, I replied. $2,800 is essentially nothing to me, which is precisely why I'm spending that exact amount on a ski vacation to Aspen with my girlfriend instead of giving it to you. You're really going to let an innocent baby suffer just because you're still mad at me? Your baby is not my responsibility. She never was, and she never will be. Victoria started crying again. I really did love you, Jake. I know you don't believe me, but I genuinely loved you. I just made some incredibly poor choices when I was scared and feeling alone. No, Victoria, you didn't love me. You loved my apartment and my car and my salary and the lifestyle I provided. If you had actually loved me, you wouldn't have been sleeping with Derek while I was working to pay for your dream wedding. More tears and attempted manipulation. I'm completely different now. I've learned so much from everything that happened. If you could help me get stable again, maybe we could even try to work things out. I hung up immediately. She's attempted to contact me 4 additional times since that conversation, each message more desperate and pathetic than the previous one. She's asked for progressively smaller amounts, $1,200, then $600, then $250 for groceries and diapers. I haven't responded to any of her communications. Derek reached out through social media last week as well. He sent a message claiming he was genuinely sorry for everything that happened and hoped we could somehow move past the situation and be adults about it. He asked if I knew anyone who might be hiring because his divorce attorney fees were completely destroying his financial stability. I blocked him immediately without responding. Yesterday afternoon, I encountered Victoria at the grocery store with her baby and her mother. She looked absolutely exhausted, pushing a cart filled with generic diapers and store-brand formula, while Madison fussed constantly. When Victoria spotted me selecting steaks in the meat section, she quickly steered her cart down a different aisle to avoid any interaction. I felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no regret, no residual anger. Complete and total indifference.